a long time ago now.
Yes, yes, it is. It happens to be. One more short story which deals with the problem of prejudice and hate is the story of the Donatuccio gets education to America.
Yes, Donatuccio goes to school in America.
In America. That is the story of your grandfather or your father?
My father, who came from the area Bari, Brindisi, Apulia in Italy. He came here in 1913 with just the clothes on his back through Ellis Island, the same story as many immigrants.
It recounts the story of death. Her sister dies
yes,
while on board.
So many people died children would die on board from smallpox, diphtheria. There were no cures for pneumonia, smallpox, diphtheria.
And since he had a handicap, he was a handicapped, how did he come through the Ellis Island?
Oh,
Maybe
he had
you could
to
tell the story
sneak
because
through.
it is in the...
He had to hide his lame leg behind his mother's skirts, and she had to hold him close, and they had to sneak through. He had a lame leg, which nowadays could be easily fixed by an orthopedic surgeon, but in those days there was no cure. And so he was, not only did he have the immigrant burden, but the burden of being a disabled person. And that's why in my new book, On Prejudice, A Global Perspective, which is a big compendium I did 3 years ago, I also talk about prejudice against the differently abled, because I'm sensitive to the plight of the handicapped as well. My father was a magnificent man, though, despite his handicap and his poverty. He worked his way to being the very first Italian-American to receive the Phi Beta Kappa in the Alpha chapter of Phi Beta Kappa at Union College.
Your father. I can see through the readings you mentioned him.
Many of the Italian women of my generation were inspired by the hard work of their immigrant parents. And my father...
Despite their lacking of education or
well, in his case,
language.
He delivered newspapers and emptied coal buckets to work his way through college. So he was among the first Italian Americans to receive honors like the Phi Beta Kappa here in this country and to graduate in 1928 from Columbia University. So he came from nothing, but he did become educated.
Maybe we would like to read maybe a passage from that short story just to see how...
Fine. This is from Donatuccio Goes to School in America, and it's a story, 14 pages, so I will skip the part where he's aboard the USS Independent and his sister dies of the fever and has to be buried at sea, and his mother is frightened and alone, and his father is already here in America waiting for them to arrive, and they have to go through all the rigorous customs of the Island of Tears, Isole de Lagrime, as it was called, the Island of Tears, so many immigrants called it, and many jumped into the sea because they were sent back after having literally been sick as dogs on the voyage over.
Must I say something which was autobiographical too? He came on the Independence, which is a sister ship that I came in.
Ah.
So I'm ancient too. I can see, I can identify the boat when I was reading.
Yes.
It reminded me of my own past.
Oh, wonderful. Well, so many wonderful, hard-working people of that generation came here with a great promise of the American dream. But they had to go through many, many rigors. And so this tells all the rigors aboard the ship and the Island of Tears. And then finally it comes to at the end where he's finally arrived here. And he's riding on his father's back, a little boy of a very small, diminutive boy of 9, who's handicapped, riding on his father's back through the streets. And finally he's in America and the hope of being educated in America. I'll never forget the thrill of riding piggyback, clinging to my strong father's shoulders through the bustling streets of New York to Grand Central Station, the people, buildings, cars, commotion everywhere. Once we got to Schenectady, it didn't take long to realize that my father wasn't happy in his shoemaker shop. Look at these cheap factory goods they bring me to mend. No one asks me to make shoes and craft them from fine leather here in America. They don't want my craft. Instead, I mend junk factory shoes for pennies. My apprenticeship all wasted. My father's craft had been replaced by the Industrial Revolution. Only a very occasional customer wanted a handicraft pair of fine leather shoes. Then he would be happy while he made them. He fashioned for me a special shoe with the sole and heel a little taller in an attempt to correct my shortened leg. Working with my father around his shop, I was at last strong enough to attend school in America. No, you are not me, you are me. I am me, and you are you. How can you not see this? The teacher scolded me on my first day in that strange classroom, and the American children laughed uproariously. I felt so foolish standing with the teacher at the blackboard as she pointed to the words you and me, which she'd written in chalk under the heading pronouns. I'd never seen chalk before, let alone written words of any kind. The teacher kept pointing to herself and saying me, and then pointing to me and saying you. But when I did exactly the same, pointing to her and said me, and pointing to me and said you, she became exasperated. All the children laughed and pointed at me. She gestured at me to return to my seat with great relief and humiliation. I did. Everyone's eyes were on me and my strange, ragged, homespun clothes compared to theirs. The bell sounded for lunch, and I sprang from my seat in imitation of the other children. They fetched lunch boxes and paper bags from their desks and ran into the fenced-in yard of the red brick building to eat lunch together. I took bread and cheese from my pocket and sat alone, eating in a corner of the schoolyard. One day, after I'd learned a little English, a boy called me, "Hey, Gimp, we want you to play ball with me." Again, with us. Again, there was that sound the wild geese make in their throats. I didn't understand what he wanted of me, but I followed his gesture. I can still see his freckled face topped with thick red hair, leering with glee at me. The schoolyard was paved with black macadam. The redhead showed me how to hit the ball with a stick when he threw it. He gestured for me to try it. I nodded and stood before home plate, clutching the stick awkwardly. But if the American boy was going to be friendly enough to ask me to join the game with his friends, I wanted to do my best. After some haphazard swings, I hit the ball into the air. "Hey, guinea gimp, you hit it," he shouted. "Now run, run." I'd often watched them play. I ran as I'd seen them do, but limped awkwardly as I ran, and the children taunted me. They crowded around me, shouting, "Cork leg, smelly guinea, what's that stuff around your neck?" The redhead shouted as he ripped from me the clove of garlic, a talisman I wore on a string around my neck under my shirt. It had bounced out of my shirt as I ran. "Phew, what a stink," he groaned, pretending to keel over, making the other children laugh at his antics. A clove of garlic was worn around the neck to ward off il malocchio, the evil eye. I was imbued with my mother's superstition. I became terrified that now I was unprotected. I was learning for sure what the wild geese sound meant. I could see the derision on their faces. They shouted, "Guinea gimp," over and over. The redhead threw the garlic talisman over the fence, holding his nose with a gesture of disgust. I fell over the rock which they had laid out as first base, trying to catch my mother's good luck charm. "You're out. We don't want you on our team, you guinea gimp. You can't talk or walk right. You stink," he said. I picked myself up. My knees ached and burned from the fall on the asphalt. With as much dignity as I could, I hobbled out of their midst. Realizing there was no private refuge in the schoolyard, I ran into the hall and down the steps to the basement toilet. I hid behind the piss and disinfected smells of the latrine, where I finally let my tears go. I vowed to learn their English better than they. Like Pinocchio, nothing would stop me. I could hear the